What up lads, and welcome to a new series on the channel entirely inspired by the Giant Goblin. By the way, I refuse to call it the Goblin Giant because that just really sounds bad. Anyway, the entire concept today is that we judge whether the new card is strong or just wrong. We'll start off today by giving comparisons with similar cards, then give the general strategy around the card, conclude whether it's strong or if Supercell got it wrong, before finally suggesting what should happen to the card. So it's been confirmed that the Giant Goblin should be comparable to the Giant himself.
And what kind of decks can you expect him to perform really well in?
If your opponent, say, plays an Elixir Collector, there's a time where they are pretty low on Elixir and don't have much to defend with. You can drop the Goblin Giant right at the bridge, and he's going to move pretty quickly to that tower. And they're not able to defend with something like Bats, because the Spear Goblins,
Pick him off.
boom, boom, pick him right out of the sky. Also, he's pretty good with cards like, let's say, Miner, because if a Miner is on the tower when the Goblin Giant goes down, the tower will retarget onto the Miner, giving the Spear Goblins a chance to really rack up a bunch more damage.
Sounds great.
The wide variety of Giant decks in the game, at least some of them will split off and say, ooh, Goblin Giant's what I'm looking for.
Amazing. I'm excited as hell.
Let's compare those stats. The Giant has about 40% more HP than the Giant Goblin. That's like a very large number when you're talking about tanks. 40% onto 2400 HP is a huge difference, and you can really see it when playing the Giant Goblin. When watching a Giant against a mini P.E.K.K.A., you see reasonable chunks of his health disappear after every swing. When you watch a Giant Goblin against a mini P.E.K.K.A., his health gets melted. I feel like for a 6 elixir building targeter, you can't really have its HP so easily disintegrated. To compare the DPS of these cards, we have to add in the 2 Spear Goblins of the Giant Goblin. A Spear Goblin does 39 DPS, and with 2 Spear Goblins, that gives us 78 DPS. Combine this onto the Giant Goblin, and you get a grand total of 163 DPS. The Giant himself has 140, so the Giant Goblin costs 20% more than a Giant, has 40% less health than a Giant, and only gets 16% DPS to account for that? Sort of. Remember, the Giant Goblin moves a little bit quicker. This means that his DPS arrives at the tower before the Giant's does. The Giant Goblin's full DPS reaches the tower about 18% faster than the regular Giant. Alright, enough of the numbers. Here's a clip of them both going straight to a tower and how effective they are at it. A Giant will get to the King Tower and deal 211 damage. The Giant Goblin will go and deal 682 damage. However, what does this information actually mean? The Spear Goblins are very easily distracted on the Giant Goblin. Distracting these will mean the Giant Goblin won't even take a tower. This brings us onto our next section of defending the Giant Goblin. Very simply, he can be shut down by distracting the Spear Goblins for long enough and putting basically any DPS onto the Giant Goblin himself. You may not even need to tank the Spear Goblins necessarily, as using a beefy unit like an Inferno Dragon will mean that the Spear Goblins are deemed useless regardless of tanking. However, when using the Giant Goblin, this sets up some unique plays. An Inferno Dragon survives lightning, but with the help of some Spear Goblins, you can make sure that your opponent's main tank killer goes down. Another interesting interaction using this information is against Minion Horde. Using a zap, you can make the Spear Goblins kill off your opponent's 5 elixir investment. As a win condition, generally the tech for it only goes so far. I can tell you that he does function like a Giant in terms of being versatile in when you play him. Against a punish deck, you can happily invest him away and build a push with this guy. Against an investment deck, you can happily punish the investment for potential damage. Those are the very basics, as I don't want to do like a full tech because I can see changes coming soon to this card. On the note of changes, is he strong or was Supercell wrong? Personally, I don't see a reason to use this card over something like a Giant. The 40% extra HP for 83% of the cost seems better in my opinion. The Giant is just easier and more efficient to build around, and the Giant Goblin's punish play isn't too great either for his elixir cost. I would much rather use something like a Hog Rider because it's faster and has a higher DPS anyway to get me more damage onto my opponent's tower. The majority of the DPS comes from the supporting Spear Goblins, which can be distracted so easily, essentially neutralizing this card. I feel like this card struggles from something that a lot of cards do, and that's being undefined. Cards like Dark Goblin and Royal Recruits aren't really in a defined role, and I feel like the Giant Goblin suffers from this too. He's not an investment and he's not a punish, he's somewhat in the middle, and that's why he's weird to use and feels wrong. That there's my conclusion. I think Supercell may have overestimated the impact of Spear Goblins being untouchable. I believe they are right to overestimate this, as Invincible Troops is sort of new to this game. My opinion could also be completely wrong and he could be like the most broken card and I just don't know anything, but I'll let you all decide in the poll in the top right now. The poll should include 2 buffs, so let's go into them really quickly. He needs one of the following: either more HP to actually be considered a tank for his elixir cost, or he should get a quicker movement speed to be defined as a punish play. This will shift his role into mainly punish or mainly invest, as at the moment he's sort of in a weird limbo. But yeah, make sure to vote on which one you believe is appropriate action, if any at all. Once more, I hope you enjoyed, and peace.